Hello everyone, what's the crack? Hope you're all doing well. As you can see here before you is some sand and cement rendering work that's just been completed. And bit of a base at the bottom, hard to actually see that detail. Obviously it was just sort of patched in there, and at the bottom is original. And this render job might look complete, but still a bit to go. A wee bit missed there on the sill, as there should be a coat of acrylic render being applied over it. And here's me using some of the sand and cement render and straighten it with Refina's Serrated edge. And there is a reason for this as well. Wouldn't always go for the serrated edge, but I tend to find it does set the render off quicker, opens it up a bit better, and seems to draw the moisture out and let the air into it a bit more and drying it out. And I think without it on this one, would have been waiting a long time to rub this render. This render was a pre-mix render, and really felt like it was too much fab in it, too much mortar mix. So definitely the plan was to get everything lashed on as quick as possible and straightened up nice and neat with the shaded edge, and let it, like I say, let shaded edge do its job in straightening and helping the render pick up a bit quicker. Had been asked about this by a subscriber recently and asked me, do I use it? So obviously the answer is yes. Not always the straight edge I go for first, but for patch jobs or jobs such as this, maybe more so in the winter now, I will grab it a lot more than just my normal feather edge, and I'll try not to close anything in too quick. And here's the ox speed skin doing a wee bit of action with a metal blade. That will be in more future videos on ceilings and that also, so you'll be seeing a bit more of that competing with another spatula also. The other spatula is, I think it's the daddy of all spatulas. It was the first to sort of come up with the design of the way the blade fits into the handle. So if anybody actually knows the name of that, drop me in a comment and let me know. I'd be very interested to know if anybody does know the name of it, and you'll win a shout out, let's put it that way. You'll get a shout out in the next video, or the next video after this one's been edited. So yeah, the straight edge has worked on this one. You've seen it all rubbed up and finished there, and to me it worked brilliantly. And this wall I'm at now, the top half of it dried eventually. You can see it's quite overcast, quite cloudy up above me there. You always have to take weather into consideration when you're working outside, and it was a wet morning. You can see the ground's wet. It was a bit of a wet drizzly morning, but it was to dry up, so we did kind of go for it. Had our scratch coat done and our beads set, so it wasn't too bad. Here's a look at it. Still a wee bit more straightening to be done, but had a bit of time here to show it all straightened, and kind of looks funny, all the lines in it and stuff. Kind of looks like another heavy scratch coat, or somebody's raked a tile adhesive trowel across it. And the smooth bits there is just where I've been checking to see if it's ready to rub, which I'll have a wee go at again here shortly. And basically just trying to get the top angle in so we can at least wash it. And when it is wet like that, you don't really want to go at it. You certainly don't want to force it, and I tend to find if you do rub it when it's too wet, you can put waves and holes in it, be hollows. So the ideal time is as it's setting, in my opinion. I like to catch it before it gets stiff. Everybody's different, all plasters are different, all renders are different, they all like different things, and like I've always said, different things will work for different people. But you know, if you are sort of following the channel, I'm sure you'll know the way I sort of like to rub things. I don't want to fade it, and I also don't want to wet it up. There's like a happy medium. And the reason I don't like wetting up my render is because I tend to find that if you flick water on it, you kind of dilute it slightly, and it comes out a wee bit of a different colour wherever the water's been applied than the rest of the wall. That being said, if you're doing acrylic on the next pass, prime an acrylic render, the thin coat, it obviously staining on the render won't matter so much, but at the same time, if you're doing a job like this and you're serious about plastering and rendering, you might want it to look all nice and even and uniform, because technically this is a finish on its own. The acrylic on top, it's just a special finish. It's more expense, more labour, more cost, more materials, and you can see the float sticking there. And at this point I'm definitely just going to let it sit. But back to the acrylic, yep, so it is a specialised type of render. I'm sure lots of guys know how to use it as well, but again, if you have never used it, you might find it a bit tricky and not understand it all. But the more you use something, the better you will get, and the more you do something, the faster and better you will get, and the more wee tips and tricks you'll find. Again, if you're watching these videos, you'll find that hopefully I'm teaching and showing you something new every week, and something you can pick up or use and adapt, or just have in your background and your bit of knowledge and think, I can apply that to this job, I can try that on this job, and adapt and make it suit yourselves, guys, because like I did say, everybody's their own individual, and what works for me might not work for you, and you might not even like it. Everybody has their own styles, but hopefully, like I say, I might get you something here or there you can change your own wee styles and make it suit. But yeah, I'm trying to force this render in, but I'm very, very lightly going over this. Sometimes I find when you rub it and you draw the moisture up, it does help, but like what I'm saying to you, I'm going to try something here. It's a wee bit different after I've closed that in slightly. I'm going to go for something that's a wee bit different that I remember me and a couple of lads talking about, and I've seen one squad doing that, and I thought it was strange and that, but I do think that it did work here for me. But again, if you don't try things, you'll never ever know. And yeah, I'm getting the wall ready for skim or turling or trilline. But yeah, so devil floating the wall, guys. Just basically trying to, it's not quite there for the float yet, and the sponge still be a bit wet at the top, and you'll notice that the sun's actually now hitting it. This is later on in the day, the sun's hitting the top half, so I do expect it to pick up a bit more. But I said, why not give this a wee try here when I have time. I can get it smoothed in, leave some lines in it, and see if it helps draw the moisture out and let some air in again. And believe it or not, it did feel like it worked quite well. Possibly not, maybe just wasting my time, but I had time to kill anyway, as the walls were, like I said, soaking wet. The stuff was ordered was full of fab, and it's not, you can see I have my hood up this whole job. It is sunny there now, it's a bit brighter, but it's quite warm, or sorry, it's quite cold, and that's why the hood's up. But like I say, the devil floating it did seem to work, and that's why you'll notice later on, possibly in a few more bits, that it was applied on more areas of the walls. So using the serrated edge and the devil float to try and help dry things out. If this was my mix, possibly less fab in it, maybe a wee dash of frostproofer, not too much, as the front wall was quite awkward and quite long, believe it or not, and obviously up and down off ladders or crates and trestles, so just need to plan things out a wee bit. You don't want things to set too fast, but you don't want to be there with car lights on at night time either. And down in the corner, just sponge floating with Refina power float. from Stock. And the reason I stuck that down the corner is there's going to be plenty more of these videos coming up of power floating render, and seems to be doing quite well on the channel, so I believe that you just want to watch more of it, and possibly one or two of you are thinking about buying it and maybe want to see what I think after more time. And for sure, I'll keep using it and keep giving my feedback. Have another video on the Refina Power Float coming up in hopefully the near future, if I can get that edited up for you guys and give you more insights to it. I actually, for a change, kind of when I was recording, I don't think the battery might have been at 4 bars, but this particular video will have a bit more of a documentation of how well then batteries lasted, and it should give you an idea of how far it'll go. I know on the wall I was able to float it with the float blade on, and then sponge it with the sponge blade on, with the sponge fitting attachment to the power float, and it'll give you a bit of an insight of what sort of distance the battery will rub for you. I also at the same time charged the battery so that we could see how quick the battery charges compared to how quick you're running the battery down. So again, be handy things for people to know before they go and purchase this type of machine. And not the cheapest machine. A lot of guys who have it say that they love them. Haven't seen too many people who have it say that don't like it, to be honest, which is a good thing. In the plastering forums and the plastering beginner forums on Facebook and that, so that kind of is a good thing. Most people that have the battery powered float seem to quite like it and get on well with it and get big walls and that done with it as well. So obviously back now to the main video and taking my time, obviously rubbing up at it, but it's actually, with a bit of sun hitting it, it does help, and you can see it picking up in the previous clip at the start where it does pick up nicely, and the sun does dry it out a good bit for me. So basically I always try and rub from top down. That allows me to clean my fascia boards up the top, around the top edge, keep it nice and clean, and then you can double check it, drop your scaffold and move on. Once it's done, drop the scaffold, get stuck into the bottom. If the bottom's not ready, get back onto the other top. You can notice we'll have all the front there coated along all the windows, and quite a plastering, obviously rendering all that can be quite a messy job. Most times when we're doing it, most houses are redoing their gardens, or it's a new build, that the paths are being redone, but occasionally like this one you kind of have to keep it a bit tidy and a bit clean and clean up after yourself, so quite a bit of cleaning to be done after the rendering's been finished. There is boards down, obviously might have been a bit handier to have some plastic down the end of the boards, and what the plastic would do is catch any mortar, any sand and cement mortar that gets in between the wee joints and stuff, and then it just means it's just a bit easier to clean. But there is boards down which get lifted and hosed down anyway, just to make sure there's nothing on the driveway. Sometimes, I'm sure some of you will notice when you're driving about that sometimes you see a wall being built and stuff, and it's like they don't care about the pathway, and there's snatters of sand and cement walked everywhere. Stuff does pick up in the heat as well, so it's the kind of thing, if you cover up, and there's always going to be wee drips somewhere, and you'll never keep somewhere 100% clean unless you absolutely cover it up as if it's a forensic site, and that in plastering you don't always get to be able to price for something like that, or you know, have the time to do that. Especially if you have tub mortar ordered in, delivered, you ain't gonna have time to cover up just 100% perfect. But yeah, so you're always gonna have to do a bit of cleaning, but at least if you cover up, you will get 98% of the dirt before it'll ever touch the ground. And then after that, you can give a good brush up, get as much brushed up dry as possible and scraped away into the bin, and then give it a good hose. Dilute the cement as much as possible and hose it away. Don't hose it in the drains, as the sand and the clay and the cement and stuff can block drains. So always cover up the drains and stuff, and try to brush up all the heavy stuff and shovel it away into a skip or a bin or an empty bag or something. And you know, just keep the drains clear. You don't want to have to get your arm down into the drain to be unclogging it. But yeah, you might be asking why not use the power float on this job. And again, the very first time I tried the power float, with the float attachment, the wall was soaking wet, and the wee clip here in the bottom corner is actually the second try of it. And basically it dug in quite a lot on me when the wall was wet, and I've recently found that if you let it dry better, it behaves itself much better, and to me it brings it back a good bit. And you know, I have been getting on much better with the second go here, when I let the sun sort of bake the stuff a wee bit, left it open, left it at a point of no return with the float where you would have had to give it all a good sprinkle, and the power float seemed to work a bit of magic on it and got it in as good as my float would. And the sponge float does leave it a wee bit coarser than a car sponge or Rambo Tools fine sponge, magic sponge. And you know, again, you can always give it a wee light sponge, as I do in this clip. I do give it a wee light sponge at the end, just to tidy it up that little bit more. So I have the top wall finished now, and just sponging, and like I said, cleaning down with nice clean water the soffits here, or fascia boards, you know, anywhere you've touched with your hands and that. So off the top, and scaffold cleared, tops wise sponged, cleared, planks and trestles out of the way. Just leaves me the bottom to get stuck into now, and it's drying here on the left hand side, and still a wee bit wet on my bottom right hand corner, but it's kind of going in stages. Everything's on now, so patience sort of is the key here now, that you know, just to rub it when it's ready. Don't always want to try and force it. Tend to think that I'm pretty good at rubbing it when it's quite wet. I don't just tend to glide over it very easily. I have a float. Again, something we were talking about on another video was floats. Somebody asked me a good way to break them in, and the best way to break a plastering float in is lend it to a floor screeder, and he'll have that float wore in a week. That'll be very nice for rubbing up rendering walls and reveals, the whole lot. It'll be well broken in, put it that way. And again, this float, I've probably had that quite a bit of while. I'm gonna give you an up close look at it later on here. It's pretty much at the end of its life, which the next one will be the one on my left hand, the one I'm doing the devil floating with, and that will be my next finishing float. But yeah, me and the subscriber, we were talking, can't remember exactly who it was, so I do apologise for that, but we were just talking about them, and he was wanting to know if I knew any tricks how to break them in quicker and easier and better. But nothing greatly, bar just a bit of sandpaper, a bit of a block, and then a bit of a sand and a bit of a light sand, just to take the edges off and thin it down a bit. I do tend to find that when the float is thin, that it finishes very well. And this float is, you know, it's done its time. It's earned its money. As has the devil float as well. But all my plastering floats, all my finishing render floats start off as the devil float, the one that I'm making all the marks with, and that's like your scratching float, as I know some people call it. And you would do that for all your internal render, keyed up, ready for the skim coat, and it gives you good grip, good key, the skim lock in. The reason I'm using it here, again, as you see, just whenever areas are wet, I was giving them the wee devil float. You can see that area, like I said previous, it's just a wee bit too wet just yet. And you know, the more you would do some rendering, guys, the better you would get, and the more you'd sort of know what's happening with it when you're rubbing it. And that for instance there, just putting the devil float over it, as it does feel like it actually is helping some. So you know, if you never try anything as well, you'll never know. And I think without the scarf and float or straight edge, this wall would still be hanging back a long time. So I think that helped. And then as I'm rubbing it, it just felt a wee bit too early. Was getting it in, felt like I was dragging it a wee bit much. Here's my float compared to the new one. You can see how thin it is. It's well rounded in. Look at the shape of that. So definitely time for this one to get broken. And you know, once you start using the float for just rubbing up, you will find it will break in a lot quicker as well. Devil float, I personally tend to devil float walls when they're still quite wet. I think the nails in it help it not dig in and stuff. Might just be me. Some people might find it different, but you know, I tend to find devil floating, you're not finishing the render, so it's not just as important as there's 2 coats of skim to go over devil floating, so it's never just quite as important. But you know, if you're ever doing something small and you think it's hanging back, maybe think about a straighted edge, or have a wee thought about devil floating it as well, and see if that helps. You know, if it's rubbing but not just quite finishing, feels like it might need 2 passes with the float, then you might be better off giving it a pass with a devil float, and that way you're still closing it in, but you're leaving it open that slight bit to let the air in a wee bit more and just help dry it out. But yeah, if you do try it, or if you're a plasterer that actually does do it this way, hit me up in the comments. I'd love to hear your techniques and your strategies of getting your render to dry quicker. Again, we didn't mix this render, so we can only control what we can control, and that is the finishing of it, and trying to get it finished as easily and quickly as possible.